We set up the Beyond Food Banks conference in response to the massive growth in food banks across Scotland, clearly the massive growth in the need for that. The fact that many people, when they get involved in running a food bank, realise that it is at best a very short-term answer to the problem. The fact that so many people need food banks is not something we should accept. We can't let food banks become normal in Scotland going to the future. There has to be a better way. There are all sorts of ideas out there, community-led initiatives, food co-ops, and there's also a role for campaigning and for focusing on the human rights issues that lie behind this.
I'm delighted to be here today and to provide what little insight we have into the world of the food bank, which is that after 35 years, there are now 450 food banks in Canada, and close to 10% of Canadians experience food insecurity. What we know is that food banks don't work at addressing poverty. We know that they don't meaningfully change whether or not people are food insecure. And we hope very much that Glasgow and Scotland and the UK will take a firm stand, look at the consequences of not investing in food security, at not seeing the devastation that poverty will cause to people, to community, and to the health of the country.
And we have been involved in food in Scotland for about 130 years. Currently, we're actually fighting against the Scottish Government on the Community Empowerment Bill. Within that, there's a section called Section 7, which is going to remove all the previous allotment legislation and update it. Unfortunately, that's going to transfer powers to local authorities and not to local communities, where they actually need it, the land to grow the food, so that we can actually provide for the people in the communities that we exist in. And that's what we're fighting for at the minute.
Nourish Scotland is a fairly new non-government organisation. We've got about 2,000 supporters in Scotland. We fundamentally believe in food sovereignty, so repurposing the food and farming system in Scotland. So first of all, it means that everybody in Scotland can eat well, and secondly, it doesn't mess up the planet. That's the basis of what we're working towards, and we do that by working across food policy at all levels, from biodiversity and climate change issues to local food economy and procurement to food poverty, and how we empower people to eat well, feed their families well. So that's what Nourish Scotland does, and we want to see the right to food being part of Scottish legislation, and we want to see a completely reformed common agricultural policy to support short supply chains, fair food, fair prices for farmers, good treatment for animals, and looking after the planet.
So Social Bite is a social business, and the idea behind a social business is that we're not just a charity, that we can self-sustain and self-propel. All of our food at the end of the day is given out to the homeless, and 25% of our employees are from a formerly homeless background. We feel that our model of business is the way forward, because instead of a charity just taking funds and just eating up those funds, and of course putting it to good work, you know, they're always going to need those funds replaced. Whereas with a social business, we can donate 100% of our profits to charity, self-propel, and keep moving forward with that, and donate more and more money the more and more money we obviously make.
It's been an incredible day. It's the beginning of a movement. It was not about coming together and talking about food banks. It was talking about sustainable food justice in Scotland and ways we can move forward. We've brought a lot of people who work on the ground day in and day out, donators, volunteers, and users of food banks, to move this thing forward and find more sustainable food justice in Scotland.